So it looks like we have some supply and demand scenarios here. And we have to draw our graph, like it says here, draw and label equilibrium. And then we have to determine what the change is. Is there a change in supply or demand? Did it increase or decrease? Then we have to identify what the shifter is. This is where you can have your notes out and turn to the page where the shifters are for supply and demand. And then we have to note what happens to the price and quantity after these shifts. Okay, so let's do that. We have our curves already drawn. So what we want to do is make sure they're correctly labeled. Supply is the upward sloping curve and demand is the downward sloping curve. An easy memory trick on this: supply in the sky, demand down low. That way you always get your axes labeled correctly, your curves labeled correctly. If you don't label them correctly, then you won't get your answers over here right. And so that's a good idea then to hang on to that memory trick. Supply in the sky, demand down low. All right, we're not done with number 1 here because we've got to put in equilibrium. So you do your little dot where they meet. Okay, and then you draw your little lines. It's not really cooperating with me very well. Okay, let's try that again. You want to put in your dot where they meet. That's a little better this time. And then you want to do the dotted lines. And then write PE for price equilibrium and QE for quantity equilibrium. Okay, so now you've done number 1 over here. You've drawn and labeled equilibrium. All right, so go back to your question. The example question asks, what will happen to the market for cafeteria pizza if the size of your school doubles? Well, it seems to me like you're going to have more people going to the cafeteria, all right, because you've got a bigger school population. That sounds like it's on the demand side because you've got more consumers. So your change is going to be in demand. You'd circle demand. It's also going to be an increase in demand. Well, now you've got to draw that on your graph, okay? So let's put it on our graph. You draw your changes. For an increase in demand, you know it goes on the right side, and you would label it D1. Why the number 1? Well, it's the first shift on this graph, so just label it D1. Then you've got to put in the new equilibrium. Okay, so you got to put in your new price equilibrium and your new quantity equilibrium. Label both of those PE1 and QE1. Okay, so now you've got your graph correctly drawn. You put the new demand curve on the right side of the old demand curve because you know that an increase in demand means that you draw a new curve or you have a shift, that's what economists say, to the right on the demand curve, on the supply and demand graph. Okay, so your shifter is number of consumers. All right, and now you have to tell what's going to happen to price and quantity after this change. Well, an easy way to do that is to go back to your axes for price and quantity. Go to your original price equilibrium, draw an arrow in the direction of your new price equilibrium. And you can see instantly that because where the axes meet down here, that's 0, and you know that it increases as it goes up, you know that in this scenario from PE to PE1, there was an increase in price. So you would just draw an arrow over here that price increases. Same for quantity. Go to your x-axis, go to your original quantity, draw an arrow in the direction of your new quantity, and you'll know that quantity has also increased. And that is what happens to the market for cafeteria pizza in this scenario.